Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Paradise. I am your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week, we watch a new film and we discuss the film in depth, with each month having a new theme. We are currently in the month of January, which is our month of music movies, and the movie we are discussing today is 2015's Straight Outta Compton. Once again, I am your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'm joined by Rob Giachinta. Rob, thanks for being here.
It's late.
It is kind of late. But we're going to have a great discussion about a really good movie.
It'll be insightful.
And it'll be fun. So, Rob, let's start with you. Tell us your first impressions of Straight Outta Compton after watching it, and roughly how many times you've seen the film.
It's probably like my fourth or fifth time watching this movie. I remember when we first saw it at the theater, and I was pretty captivated on how great of just a directorial effort by F. Gary Gray. I think this is... I've seen some of his other movies, and I think they've kind of just been like, whatever, but I think this is his shining moment. A movie, you could have argued to me he deserved a Best Director nomination. The way that this movie looks and feels, you feel like you're right in the middle of the Compton streets and on stage with the band. I think it's a really good movie, and it's anchored by three lead performances from pretty much unknown actors at the time.
Yeah.
Especially Ice Cube's son. There was a bunch of controversy over
Corey Hawkins, O'Shea Jackson Jr., and Jason Mitchell. Yeah. All three, and now they've all kind of blown up after this movie.
Corey Hawkins was in Black Klansman. Jason Mitchell's been in...
They were both in Kong Skull Island.
O'Shea's in Godzilla.
Yeah, and he was in Ingrid
Goes West.
Ingrid Goes West. Yeah,
so
they're all doing well.
This movie made names for those guys. And
F. Gary Gray went on to do Fate of the Furious.
And he's doing Men in Black, too.
Yeah, so this movie really benefited everyone involved. And Paul Giamatti, of course, he's gotten a lot
very underrated in this movie. Very underrated actor in general,
I would agree with that.
An actor that I think should have a lot more recognition, Oscar nominations.
Because, I mean, the brilliant job that he did with The Amazing Spider-Man 2 playing the Rhino, and just the decisions he made in terms of how handy to do the accent, the characteristic decision to drop the pants to show his boxers, it's really marvelous. It's really pure acting at its finest.
Oh, that movie's awful.
Well, how many times would you say you've seen Straight Outta Compton?
I said 4 or 5 times.
Sorry, I missed that part. Okay, last time when we did this, and I asked you at the end how many times you've seen it, and you said, I told you that I listened. You never told me.
I'm pretty sure I said it. What movie?
Who's the one who edited? Almost Famous.
You must have just not heard it. Maybe I didn't pick up on the mic.
Maybe you just didn't say it.
I'm pretty sure I said it. Okay. All right.
4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Nice. So my first impressions is I've seen this movie, I think, 3 times. Saw it in theaters. I saw it one time when I got on Blu-ray, and I saw it this time. I really like this movie a lot. I think this is a great ensemble film. And like you said, led by 3 powerhouse performances. I think, and even I would go as far to say that all the performances in this movie are great. I love all the performances in this movie. I think this really... It sells you on its characters, and it gets you to buy into these characters, and you are along with them for the ride, and through the highs and the lows, and you can see where the music comes from, and you gain a greater appreciation. And I like how, there are themes of police brutality and racism and everything that kind of elevate the source material than just being a band's journey. I would say and we can get more into this later, but my biggest issue with this movie is that I think it is too long, and it keeps going, when if it had kind of come to a close earlier, it would have been perfect. But the movie just kind of keeps going and going and going, and it just it loses a lot of its impact the longer that it goes, and it could have been a lot
God
shorter.
only knows how we would have felt if we watched the director's
cut.
We
watched the theatrical cut.
20 more minutes. Jesus.
Theatrical cut was like 2:20.
Yeah.
Unrated cut.
2.5.
We would have still been watching the unrated cut if we'd gone to that one. Jesus Christ. But
yeah, I definitely do agree with that. I feel like there's a lot of scenes in this movie that you could cut around or cut out.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is that there's a ton of scenes where you watch them and you're like, this didn't need to be in here.
Yeah.
Anything with Snoop Dogg, you didn't need that.
No.
I mean, and it just would have been...
they were like, oh, well, we have to show Snoop Dogg. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have to say, the beginning part of the movie is much better than the latter part of the movie.
The first half, definitely, I agree. And
I think it flies by, and then once you get towards the middle, it starts to slug along a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's because we were having the discussion off camera talking about whether or not this should have been nominated for Best Picture. And I think that's my biggest reason for why I wouldn't. Just because I feel like... I mean, I kind of feel the same way with Bohemian Rhapsody. Not in terms of the length of the film, but just like... It was a really good movie, and I liked it. But I wouldn't put it in a Best Picture.
I like this way more than Bohemian Rhapsody.
I would agree with that. Though. I would definitely agree with that. But I'm saying in terms of the Oscars, that's where I would...
It looks like Bohemian Rhapsody is going to get nominated.
Oof.
Could have a shot to win. Who knows?
All right. So, I want to start this conversation off first by saying... Last week when we talked about Almost Famous, one of the big things we talked about that film was that how restrained the movie was. That they had all these opportunities to show all the drugs, all the sex, all the craziness, and they didn't. They chose not to show all that, and they kept the focus on the characters, and that led to a better film. Straight Outta Compton, when you watch it, they don't hold back on those elements. No. They go all in. But yet the movie... it still works. So I would pose the question to you, Rob. What is it about Straight Outta Compton that showing those things helps the film, whereas with Almost Famous, the film benefits from not showing those things?
Interesting question. I'd say it helps the film by showing that, like, even though these characters had just had become celebrities now, and they were making all this money, that they still kind of resorted to their old tactics and old ways of like bringing weapons everywhere they went and like doing the drugs and even like later on selling the drugs still. Yeah. And it showed that like even though that you could start to prosper with your life, but there's just always going to be a party that might be stuck in your past, and I think that shows through the characters. Yeah,
and just even I do think it was important to show all that. Because, and I think even if you think to that one scene where they're having the orgy in the hotel,
that was just a love fest.
Yeah, well, that's what an orgy. All right, love fest is probably a nicer word. Okay, so let's call it a love fest. That love fest that was happening in the hotel. You know, I think those scenes, they kind of heighten who these characters are. These characters, like you were saying, they grew up in Compton where they pretty much had nothing. They didn't have anything, and they were being harassed by the police on a daily basis, being arrested for nothing, and they really had nothing to show for themselves. And so once they actually rise up and gain some sort of fame, some sort of notoriety, some sort of popularism, this is what they can do now. And I think it shows that. I think showing it definitely helped with this film. And I think if they hadn't showed it, I don't know if anything would necessarily be missing. Like, I don't know if we would be looking at Straight Outta Compton as a lesser film if they didn't show the Love Fest. Or if they didn't show Eazy-E, like, weighing weed or whatever. Like, if they didn't show these things, I don't know if it would necessarily take away from the film. But showing them doesn't detract from the film. Whereas if they had showed some of the crazier things in Almost Famous, I think that would have detracted from that film. I think it's all about who your characters are and how the film is crafted. And I think as long as whatever elements you have in your film work towards that film, and they are characteristics of your characters, and they work to support your characters. This was shown from the very beginning.
Yep. And when you see these actions, I don't think they come out of nowhere either. I think they're actually like things that you would expect these characters to do. And it does seem somewhat realistic. I mean, some of the... I still think them having all those machine guns in that hotel room was a little ridiculous. I mean, how...
Well, who knows? This is a true story. Yeah. That could have been true.
I don't know how the hell they got them on the tour bus, but whatever. I mean, it was true to the characters, I think. At least the characters they set up in the movie.
Yeah. One line that always sticks with me whenever I watch this film is, remember when it was right after they were arrested for doing fuck the police, and they're doing the press conference. And the line always sticks with me is, I believe it's Eazy-E who says it. He says, "Our art is a reflection of our reality." And I think that it was in the trailers, and I remember when I heard that in the trailers, that really stuck with me. And then hearing it in the film, I think that line so perfectly sets this up, because kind of that whole conference, press conference, you have all these reporters saying, like, your songs glorify violence and all this stuff. Why do you keep saying this? Why do you rap this? Why are you making this part of your art? And I think that one line perfectly embodies everything about this film, is that their art, what they're putting out there, and even Ice Cube later in the film refers to himself as a journalist. He says, "I am a journalist reporting what's going on in the hood." Our art reflects our reality, what we see and what we go through, and what people who are not as fortunate as us, there's a lot of people, a lot of friends that they had who they left behind once they became famous. People who, like Dr. Dre's brother, who was not fortunate enough to go on to the same level of fame as his brother, and what happened? He was killed. And I think something that the movie really communicates is that whilst there were times where the characters got caught up in the fame and the money and all these things that are open to them now, but I feel like in the back of their heads, they never forgot where they came from, and they never forgot the struggle that people who were not fortunate enough to become famous like they were, they were still going through. And with their music and with what they were doing in this movie, they were trying to bring perspective and light to the struggles of what's going on in their hometown.
I mean, even in the beginning of the movie, I forget exactly who says it, but they call their work of art like reality rap, pretty much, because it is just a reflection on what they've grown up in, what they see, what the media perceives them as well, and it's not necessarily that this is all that they necessarily know, but this is what they know the best, and this is what. And another thing is when they rap about this stuff, this is what people like want to hear or whatever, and it showed that this kind of rap was profitable, so why should they restrict themselves to rap about something else when this was working for them, and they were spreading their messages through their music.
And this is kind of what they've only ever known. This is what they grew up in. This is the constant violence, all that. That's how they grew up in this place where you solved your problems with a fight. There weren't times for conversations or anything, and that sort of constant hostility of the conflict between people, the conflict between the police, all that constant hostility and conflict, that was their reality. And so their art showcases that, and their art brings light to that and shows people that this is what's going on, and people are actually struggling. And I think the historical times of what's going on around the time that the music was coming out, you have
it's a nice backdrop to the movie.
Exactly. You have the LA riots going on. Yep. You have the Rodney King incident that happens. You have all these things going on, and this is a very it's weird to use the word interesting, but it's an interesting time in American history where all these things are coming to a head that have been building up for years, not even years, generations, decades, centuries. All these things have been building up and coming to a head, and then suddenly they just collide. And I think in the same way that happens historically during the time that this film takes place, that happens with the characters as well. Mm-hmm. And I think with their own struggles of what they're still processing what it is that they went through growing up in Compton and growing up like this, and then trying to help people who are still struggling, and it all comes to a head.
I like at the end, though, when they all kind of settle their differences and kind of understand that they need to go back to their roots and remember who they are and how they got to be as famous as they were, because they were all friends and they loved doing what they were doing.
I think something that the that isn't always remembered is that when the members of NWA became famous. They were just teenagers.
Yeah, this is essentially a coming of age story as well.
Yeah,
when I was thinking about it, they were very young boys, and they were learning how to become men.
Yeah, it's and I think that's something that the film kind of, it doesn't always necessarily communicate that they're teenagers.
Yeah,
I think you can kind of forget that, especially, and I hate this in movies where it takes place over a long period of time, but the characters never age or physically age. And that's something that I have an issue with this is, like, especially by the end when Ice Cube is sitting down on his couch and he's like, wow, I looked young. I was like, you look exactly the same.
He just looks a little, heavier, maybe.
That's something that always bothers me when it's, like, and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I think, is one of the worst offenders of that. Like, 20 years pass, and, like, James Franco never ages once.
Oh, really? I've never thought about that.
Yeah. I hate when movies
I agree with that.
But I think I don't know if this movie necessarily communicates from the beginning that they're teenagers. Like, I don't think it necessarily beats that over you so that everyone walks away understanding that, but that is the reality. And so I think I agree. There's a lot of coming of age elements. Overall, I think this movie does a good job balancing all those. I do want to talk about one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when so NWA gets the letter from the FBI saying you cannot perform the song "Fuck the Police," and then they go to it was Detroit, right? Mm-hmm. It was Detroit, and they are warned by all the cops there. They have the whole lineup of cops saying, you cannot perform the song "F the Police." Yeah. and they're like, sure. Keep talking. And then they perform the song, and the police raid the stage, and they all get arrested. And that scene is so perfectly directed.
Agreed.
F. Gary
a lot of tension is built in that scene.
Exactly. And you kind of know where it's heading the whole time, but there's still the anticipation, and they keep cutting to the cops and the audience watching, and you're feeling this dread, and you know that
it's going to end badly.
Yeah. But it's like from the dinner scene, they're like, this is freedom of speech and everything. You know that it's the right thing to do for them to play the song. And then to see the reaction to it, and you feel the tension being built, and you know where it's heading. And then when Ice Cube starts rapping, and the police in the audience, they start taking out their badges and rushing the stage, and like you can feel it building and building and building, and then it leads perfectly into that press conference where I think they highlight some of the biggest points of this movie.
And I also like when they're thrown into the giant police truck, and then they all come in and they start laughing together because they know what they did the right thing, and they
all publicity is good publicity. They know that, like, they knew that when they got the letter from the FBI that it was only going to bring more attention to them. They knew that getting arrested was only going to make them bigger names. Mm-hmm. And
it's the same thing with like a band like Two Live Crew had a lot of their music banned. It's just people like to rebel, and it's a good way to get popularity. Yeah, and these men excelled at it.
So we talked a bit about the performances, and I think. Well, I'm curious as to what you think. Who gives the best performance in this film? Would you say
out of all the actors, or the main three?
Well, I would say the main three are probably the best performances, but you can...
Well, Paul Giamatti is excellent in this movie.
He is great in this movie.
But if I'm just boiling it down to the three, I definitely say Jason Mitchell is easy.
I agree.
I think he could have been nominated for Best Supporter.
I completely agree. He's excellent.
The heart and soul of the movie, I think. And the movie starts with him and it ends with him.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Oh, I just said it.
And that scene... when he is sitting in the hospital bed and he learns that he has AIDS, and that was brilliant. Agreed. The acting and the emotion he gets and just his reaction, and it was so perfectly set up because we just had the scene, a couple scenes before, setting up the fact NWA is getting back together. Yeah. They're going to reunite. The whole future is ahead of them. And then it all comes crashing down in that one moment. And Jason Mitchell played the scene perfectly.
Oh yeah, he's really. But I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to Corey Hawkins too.
Yeah.
That scene where his brother died,
that was a great scene.
coming off the bus. He was excellent in that scene. He held his own the whole movie.
O'Shea Jackson Jr.
First,
excellent.
Because I remember like watching the movie talk shows and stuff like that. When he was announced, people were just like, "Oh, this is like, oh, he just got the role because he's the son of Ice Cube."
I do not think you could have gotten anyone else to completely bring the character of Ice Cube to life.
Yeah, because he knew how to play his dad.
Exactly.
And he looked just like him. I think it worked. Because
he had the snarl perfectly. Yes. He had the inflections perfect. He had it all down.
Because I know Eazy-E's son wanted to play Eazy-E. I don't know how that went. But But now O'Shea is proven himself to be a serviceable actor in this business. So
he is a very good actor, and I think he was perfect for this role.
Better than his dad, to be honest.
Yeah.
He was good in Den of Thieves, too, to be honest with you.
I think O'Shea was perfect in this movie.
Yeah.
I think it was absolutely the right choice to go with him for the role. I thought he absolutely delivered, and I wouldn't have wanted anyone else.
And I'll give credit to I don't know the actor's name, who played Suge Knight. Mm-hmm. He's very intimidating in the movie. He's a very intimidating force. And that scene where the man is parked in his spot.
That's brutal.
Flips out. That is nasty. That guy had some serious issues.
Right, and he's in jail now. But I remember when Straight Outta Compton was coming out, there was this whole discussion about the fact that a lot of the members of NWA were involved in the making of the movie. They kind of oversaw a lot of the production elements, and as a result, there were certain things that happened in real life that were kind of glossed over. I remember a whole thing about the fact that the movie largely ignored a lot of Dr. Dre's in real life, his abuse towards women, and how a lot of people felt like that since the members of NWA were involved in the making of the movie, that some of the uglier parts were cut out. And so I'm curious, do you think that is a detractor from the film, and that when you watch this movie, you can't help but think about the fact that it's kind of a little bit glossed over, or does it not matter that that's the case, and you just watch Straight Outta Compton and you like it for what it is?
I mean, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter at all. I mean, I would have liked it if this could have been absolutely true to the story, but I understand in the industry, like, obviously, like, if they're still alive, Dr. Dre has his name on everything. He can't have like a movie that depicts him as even if that probably, you know what, it all is true, and, you know, I'm not saying that I support with Dr. Dre or I support his brand or anything like that, but I understand that if they have to be involved in this since they're still alive, and I know that he can't have that on there, so I kind of just accept it as I watch it, but I also, part of me wishes that we could have gone a little deeper, but I think this movie I don't think it depicts them necessarily as saviors in a way, but I mean, there are some scenes where, like, they are kind of, I just feel, it feels a little weird, because, like, Eazy is kind of, like, portrayed as out of the main three is probably the more, like, sinister one. Yeah. And it's kind of just like, oh, well, he's the one who's dead and doesn't, like, have any say in it, which kind of, like, affects me. But for the most part, I would say it's not a big problem.
Yeah. And I think people are kind of having a similar debate now with Green Book and
Bohemian Rhapsody.
I personally think you got to do what makes for the best movie.
Agreed.
Sometimes, like you said, would I have wanted it to go even deeper? And if you can make it the most realistic possible while still making a great film, I will always advocate for that. Because I will always want more layers to my characters. I will always want there to be more conflict in who they are. And I don't want characters who are just like, oh, they're just depicted as the complete good guy.
Angels.
Yeah, angels. and especially when I think we've definitely seen movies where we know the real life people are involved, and then the characters are just made out to be like, oh, they're complete saints.
Yeah.
So I will always want if they can and still make a great film, I will always want them to include the whole truth. But I can understand, like, there's some give and take. And sometimes you have to take some things out, and as long as it doesn't, like,
the movie.
Yeah, because if literally there was not one bad thing that Dr. Dre did in this movie, and he was depicted as an upstanding citizen, and same with Eazy-E, same with Ice Cube and all that, when we all know blatantly that's not the truth,
like, there's a
that would affect the movie.
Ice Cube, like, friggin' goes in that guy's thing and beats the crap out of everything.
I'm okay with the filmmakers taking liberties to make the best film possible, but once it affects the nature of the movie,
I wouldn't. I mean, at that point, it's not even the filmmaker's decision. I don't really feel like it's just the producers and what they say can go.
Yeah, I would just rather that. Like I know like oh, we want to get these movies out when we want, but I would rather that we just wait until people are dead before we start making these movies, because I don't want, and this was kind of one of my issues with Bohemian Rhapsody, was I felt like there were elements of it, like deeply conflicted moments and moments of drama that were just kind of glossed over, or key moments that were just completely skipped over, just because the people were involved and they didn't want negative.
I feel with that movie though, it just overall, I don't think it was the best made movie in a sense. Like there's a lot of like this stuff like with that movie where I think it just has too fast of a pace at sometimes. Agreed. And just kind of just rushes things, not necessarily to not show them because they're bad, but just rushes them. And that's my problem with that movie. This movie, I wouldn't say it rushes. I say this movie kind of can slog on for a little bit towards the ending.
Yeah, but I just think that I would prefer if we don't have the original people involved in any of these movies, regardless of, I'm not even talking about at this point, talking about music biopics and just any true story. I don't want the people who were involved with it in real life involved in the film, because I want, as objective as you can, a film made.
Problem is, like, a lot of even like even if their family's alive though, they still can have say over, which sucks too. I mean, I don't want to make a movie on you, and you didn't like, and your family like didn't want to show it.
Well, there's nothing that. There's not much dirt on me.
Something that we didn't know about.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. Yeah, I mean, I understand it. Yeah, and it's something I just have to be okay with.
But if you can't do it, maybe you just shouldn't make it.
Yeah, I just am always going to prefer as deep and characters as you can have, as multifaceted characters as you can have. And once you start stripping away some of those facets and some of those layers, then I think it starts getting to the detriment of the characters and to the detriment of the film. But I think in the case of something like Straight Outta Compton, like we've been saying, I don't think it's necessarily to the detriment of the film. Could the movie have been better had they didn't have Dr. Dre and Ice Cube in real life shepherding this film, and they were able to kind of get into some of the darker parts and the more grisly parts that those people wouldn't have wanted involved in the film? Yeah, maybe Straight Outta Compton could have been a better movie, but I think the movie that we got is still pretty damn good.
Yeah, I would say that those are I'd say the biggest issues are just the overall pacing and length of the movie, not those issues, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I will say, and kind of going off of Bohemian Rhapsody, one of my biggest problems with that movie is that most of it was just regular Queen recorded soundtrack. I like all the actors in this movie, they recorded all their own stuff. This isn't...
Some of the songs that they played, like, I don't think everything was...
anything that was being supposed to be from... Yes, I know, because the actors, they recorded that full Straight Outta Compton album. They recorded the whole album.
I'm glad. Well, I knew Ice Cube, I couldn't really tell either way, but...
Any of the times that they were rapping and any of that was all them.
Yeah, I see. Like, that's why I'm excited for that movie Rocket Man, because he's actually going to be... I don't care if he doesn't sound exactly like Elton John.
Exactly. You know what? That's always been my thing, is that if it doesn't sound just perfect, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It feels
no
more
one's
genuine.
Going to sound like Elton John. Really. I don't think so.
It feels so much more genuine to me when the actors are singing it for real. And that whenever I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody and it was Rami Malek singing, but it was so clearly just a Queen recording with the real Freddie Mercury, it's like that took me out immediately, because I could... immediately I could tell, oh, he's just lip syncing.
Yep.
It just took me out of the movie. Even if it doesn't sound just right, which
it'll be distracting at first, but you'll get into it and you'll get over
it. It makes it feel more authentic to me. Maybe I shouldn't feel that way, but it feels.
But I
more
do,
authentic.
and you can't tell me how to feel.
Another scene that I love is when they are recording the album, and then they step outside because Dr. Dre had like a thing with his girlfriend that he's talking to, and then everyone else comes out, and then the police come and put them all on the ground, and then Jerry comes out and defends them. That scene is excellent.
Agreed.
And I love how it's directed perfectly because we've had all this set up in the before in the film of constant harassment from the police. And so when you have all the members of NWA there, they're literally going through it just like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
Do the drill. Like, they know exactly what's coming. And really, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time in the movie that a white character is seeing what's going on to the black characters from the police.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so, and I am willing to bet that Jerry at that point had never seen anything with police brutality regarding black people. He had never seen anything like that. And he's never had an incident like that himself with the police. And so for him to walk in and to just see something so blatantly wrong happen, and he defends them, and it shows, it's a moment of white privilege that he is able to get in the cop's face and yell like that, and he's not beaten to death like Rodney King. I thought that scene was brilliantly directed. It escalates perfectly, the way everyone is directed and the performances. And then Jerry enters and he's going off and yelling off at them. That was a great scene.
Paul Giamatti's performance is an interesting one because, like, there's if you're watching it for the first time and you don't really know the story, there's parts of it where he portrays like. You actually believe he's like actually helping them.
Yeah.
But then later on you learn that he's the villain. And I think his performance really helps like shape the movie as a whole and shows like how easy they all like except for Ice Cube at first like kind of just went along with it just because this was the first amount of money they were seeing.
Yeah.
And even though they could be earning way more, they just didn't know any better and they were kind of just roped into this.
Exactly. I think this movie really shows that once money is involved, everything goes out the window. Like, friendships are betrayed, trusts are betrayed, everything is betrayed once money is on the line. And I think that is I think the movie makes it clear. It's one of their biggest issues. NWA was that the first person who came to them with a record deal they signed with, and they didn't pay attention to the details. They didn't have, even though they kind of knew that they should have a lawyer present. They didn't have a lawyer present. They, like you just said, they had not seen money like this, and they needed money. They needed, I think even the character said as much. They needed to support their parents. They needed to support their girlfriends. They had bills to pay. They needed the money, and so it didn't matter if they were getting screwed a little bit. They didn't care. And then once they got further down the line and just realized how much they were being screwed over, I think it just shows how ugly a lot of these businesses are. The movie business, the music business, any of these
everything's
businesses,
just for money, really, essentially.
Yep.
More money,
no problems. But yeah, it just shows any of these businesses or industries where all this money is on the line, people just get screwed over constantly. And I think that is the whole point of Paul Giamatti's speech at the end. He says, this is just business. This is business. I'm not the one who invented this. I'm not the one who decided this. This is just the way things are.
He was saying, like, I covered my own ass, but
and he repeats it twice.
Yeah.
He says the exact same, like, line twice. Yep. And I think that was key because I think that kind of just shows how even though he was getting worked up at the end, I think he was more getting worked up that he was losing one of his biggest assets as opposed to the fact that he was losing Eazy-E's friendship. Mm-hmm. I think it just shows that once the money is on the line, everything else goes out the window. People don't care. People don't read the fine print, and then people start screwing everyone else over.
Just work for free.
Yeah. Just put your stuff out on SoundCloud and never take a dime.
Yeah, see, he wasn't like the manager in Almost Famous who was like friends and like always had their back.
Agreed.
But I mean, Jerry did have their back in a lot of situations. Though. Again, like we said, with the police.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think there were definitely times where Jerry was
was
on
a
their side.
redeemable
I think
character,
they were both kind of right and wrong in their
Yeah.
situations. Jerry definitely, they would not be where they were if not for Jerry. Like Jerry was saying in the beginning of the movie, he's the one who got them in the room. He's the one who opened all these doors for them. I mean, it was definitely their music that made them popular and made them famous, but he's the one who made the connections to make sure that people did hear their music. And so I think Jerry definitely helped them. But there was no doubt that Jerry was screwing them over in terms of keeping them out, making sure that they didn't have lawyers present to double check the contracts, making sure that he was getting a little bit more than he should have, making sure that they were getting a little bit less than they should have. So I think Easy was wrong in that Jerry was definitely helping them out, and they definitely wouldn't be in that position had it not been for Jerry. But Jerry was definitely screwing them over.
Like the scene by the pool where he just hands them a bunch of checks and says "Oh, you need to sign these checks." And he's already gone out of his mind at that Wet and Wild pool party. He ain't knowing who the hell he's signing those things to.
Yeah, no, exactly.
He knew exactly when to get them. It's. If my mom ever needed lunch money for us when we were she'd be to my dad when he was half asleep, they need a check, and he'd be
Yeah.
I also remember if I would ask my mom for a late night movie on demand to buy it for $5, I know to ask her when she was asleep, so she'd be like, yeah, just do it.
Yeah, you got to know.
And that's been me
timing.
too. I've had my mom ask me stuff, and I've been yeah, and then a couple hours later, she's like, "Oh, you ready to do that thing for me?" I'd be like, "What?"
Yeah, that happens to me too. It will always.
Next thing you know, you're naked with a gimp in your mouth, and you.
As things generally happen when your mom asks you to help you out with things around the house. So with every music movie that we've been talking about this month, we are trying to get down to what in the essence of this film makes a music movie. And I think when we were talking about Almost Famous last week, we were kind of talking about, it's a music movie, but it's also, there are larger ideas. It's more of a coming-of-age film. There's also larger elements at play other than just music. And you even mentioned at the beginning of this discussion that Straight Outta Compton is kind of a coming-of-age film. But I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a coming-of-age film over a music movie.
It doesn't go that route enough to classify it as one. I think there's elements of it, but not enough. But going off what you said, what makes this a music film? I think because it shows what the music industry did to this friendship and how it kind of destroyed them and separated them all. While it also destroyed them and also helped them have better lives for themselves and their families and brought them out of where they were. And who knows, some of them might not be around. It
brought light and attention to issues that are going on, like injustices and suffering.
Some of them, who knows, they could have resorted to gangs or something, and they might not even be alive if it wasn't for music.
Like in the case of Dr. Dre's brother.
Yes.
So, I would agree with that. I definitely think this is a music movie. And I think it really does make music the core of its film. It's all about the music. It's all about the journey of these artists and how music saved their lives and how it helped them grow and all the great things and all the terrible things that resulted as all came from their music. And like the quote says, their art is a reflection of their reality. And so as we bring this discussion to a close, Rob, what would you say are your final thoughts on Straight Outta Compton?
Well, this movie has some flaws to it, as in its pacing, and there's scenes that could be cut out and it could be a lot shorter. I think this movie it triumphs over that in a lot of ways with its direction and its acting. And you get 3 powerhouse performances, I think, and overall, I think they carry the movie for the most part. And while sometimes you might be a little bored or maybe wanting a little more from scenes, I think there's the perfect amount of stuff to make this a good movie. And would we give scores?
You can if you'd like.
I give this a 4.1 out of 5.
Nice. I would agree. I really like this movie a lot. I think it is the three performances that really make this movie. And I would also throw Paul Giamatti in there.
Yeah, you put 4.
They're the three central performances, and Paul Giamatti is a great supporting performance. I just think where it really kind of slows down is it just, once you get past that main story of these 5 friends coming together, making this music, and then I think it's really when Ice Cube goes off and does his own thing.
Yeah.
That's when the pacing slows down, and that's when it kind of unnecessarily goes into all these different story directions that didn't need to be there. And it just kind of, it feels like there's a lot of fat on the movie that they could have trimmed down.
So at what point of the movie do you think that is? Like, how long was it over? It was over an hour, right?
At that point?
Yeah.
It was.
They literally could have just did like some sort of like almost like in a montage way, like showed all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it skipped over a lot of like the Suge Knight stuff I don't think you really needed.
That wasn't.
And then you could have just showed the reunion.
Yeah.
And then Easy getting sick, dying.
Well, because I think
you could have had like an hour and 15-minute movie.
Where this movie thrives is when it's
all the
core relationship.
Yeah.
And so once they split up and once you start introducing all these extra characters and it deviates from that core, that's when it slows down. For me at least. So I think this movie could have been an hour 45.
Hour 50, yeah.
This movie could have been a very strong hour 45. And I'm telling you, if it was, and they cut out a lot of the extra stuff, and they kept on the focus of the film on NWA and on those central characters, this movie's already really good. We could have been talking about a fantastic film.
Agreed.
I think. So, yeah, I really like this movie, but for me, the biggest issue is that there's a lot of extra stuff that doesn't need to be there. I wouldn't say it derails the film. Not at all, but I would say it definitely slows it down, and it kind of it kind of lessens a lot of the impact of the punch that this movie has, especially in the beginning.
Agreed.
So, and as for rating, I'd give it 4.2 out of 5.
Wow,
probably.
you gave it higher?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm surprised you went 4.1. I thought you were gonna go like 4.5 or something like that.
Well, I said it's definitely slower, and this is just judging it off like me watching it right now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I forget what I gave it when I first saw it.
Yeah, I
think I liked it a lot more.
I think I gave it like a 4.4 or 4.5 when it came out or something like that. But
it was one of my favorite movies of that year.
I agree.
But looking at what was nominated for, that was a stacked year for.
That was a great year for
Martian,
film.
Mad Max, Revenant, Spotlight. Those are like 4 like
2015. Yeah.
The Room.
Yeah, Room. That was my favorite.
Have you seen Brooklyn?
No, I haven't.
That one's really good too.
Yeah.
So. Bridge of Spies could have been.
2015 was a really good year.
I would have taken Bridge of Spies off, and then instead of that, Straight Outta Compton, maybe even put Creed in that.
Yeah, I could live with that.
Or Inside Out too that year. That was a really good year for movies.
2015 was excellent for movies. That was a great year. And to see the disparity between 2015 and 2018.
Yeah, it's
okay. I won't say there's some people saying 2018's garbage.
There have
been some excellent films.
Agreed.
But the amount of excellent films, there's only been a few I'd say that I would really say are just top.
Then there's been a lot of films that were just really good, I thought.
Most of the ratings I gave out in 2018 were like just threes.
Yeah, just good movie. Yeah, there was like movies like Hereditary, 8th Grade, Black Klansman. I thought those movies were just like, I thought they were going to be like excellent movies, and they were all just good. And then there were some that crossed over and were great, like A Quiet Place. But just overall, it was either movies were average, good, or bad, and then there were the couple fantastic ones, I thought.
I'd agree.
There was a lot of bad ones, though, at least
2019 looks like it's going to be an incredible year.
Oh, my God. I can't wait to talk about that list.
Yeah, so that'll be coming. But this isn't that discussion. That is coming later. But what discussion this is that this has been our discussion of Straight Out of Compton. So, once again, I am your host, Nathanael Molnár. Thank you so much for listening. And Rob, thanks for joining us for this discussion.
Hey, you held me hostage. What can I say?
Yep, I kind of did. So, that was our discussion of Straight Outta Compton. Next week, we are talking about another really great music movie.
One of my favorite movies of all time. One of my childhood classics.
This is going to be a great film. We're going to be talking about School of Rock, 2003, Jack Black. It's going to be a great...
Well, you're not hardcore unless you live hardcore.
That's such a great movie. And especially, I think, more than any other movie we're talking about this month, that embodies the music movie.
Oh, 100%.
That's gonna be a great discussion.
And just that's a movie that I just watched like all the time as a kid. I don't know about you, but I had that. I probably friggin' burnt out that VHS tape.
Yeah, I that's a great movie. I can't wait to talk about that. So make sure to look online next Saturday for a discussion of School of Rock. You're not going to want to miss that. So you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of our social medias at Movie Night TNT. That's Movie Night TNT. There you can get the links for our YouTube, for our Spotify, for our iTunes, and that is where every Saturday, every episode of Movie Night Tonight goes up, and you can get all previous episodes. So yeah, this has been season 2, episode 2. Next week, episode 3, School of Rock. Not gonna want to miss it. So until we talk about School of Rock, thanks for listening.